of the attack. They came and they went back to Pakistan and said, oh, the Indians did it to themselves. That was the last straw. The next terrorist attack, India sent a squad across to attack the very base from which the attack had come.
Okay.
The next terrorist attack in Pulwama, India did an airstrike.
That's
just
a lot
one.
of terrorist attacks.
The next terrorist attack, this time in Pahalgam, Kashmir, India hit 9. How much longer do the Pakistanis want to play this game? India is prepared to play it. But India is much happier to be left alone.
But one thing you put on Twitter, I just want to ask you about it because I was curious myself. You've praised on the application X the code name Operation Sindoor, which has been launched by India. You've said it's a brilliant name. Just tell us why it's significant and why you think it's such an appropriate name for this military operation.
Sindoor is the vermilion reddish mark that women who are married put right there in the middle of their foreheads when they part their hair.
Okay.
And the image that was seared into the nation's consciousness after the terrorist attack in Pahalgam was of a newly wedded, now newly widowed bride on her honeymoon, kneeling disconsolately by the body of her slain husband.
Yeah.
Weeping. In other words, a terrorist attack had wiped the sindoor off her forehead, because only married women wear it. It was a very emotional.
So that was the one where they killed her husband and they didn't want to kill her because they wanted her to, like, tell everybody what happened.
Term.
I think that's the one he's talking about.
Of what had happened and why this action was necessary. That innocent civilians, including this young woman, and by the way, a few other women who were widowed in the process of the same attack, had all experienced.
Let's try to be optimistic for a moment. In a grave crisis, there is sometimes an opportunity to iron out some of these nearly 80-year-old issues that exist between India and Pakistan. Do you have any
shakes his head
that we could perhaps turn this into an opportunity?
Look, first of all, as far as the present crisis is concerned, there is no need to call upon India to exercise restraint because India is already exercising restraint. It has announced it will not initiate a single military action, but it will react if there is military action imposed upon it. So all the international community needs to do is to get Pakistan to behave, is to tell them to stop attacking. The moment they stop attacking, the moment they can find any excuse to claim their honor is satisfied, that would be the end of that.
Okay, so
if Pakistan wants
Pakistan since then has announced that they've won the war.
They will get it.
Yes.
And I think very few people
they already
which
won.
Two countries has greater staying power in a war. So that's on the present situation. Yeah. I think the ball is entirely in Pakistan's court. They can stop any prospect of increased conflict now. India has not put a foot on the escalatory ladder. Pakistan has. So that's the first and most important thing to understand. On the larger question, no, sir, we are not going to allow terrorists to allow Pakistan to get what they want, which is to internationalize the dispute and to provoke a negotiation or a mediation to get them what they want. What terrorists have failed
if you do that, then they're just going to do more terrorism. Yeah, you can't feed that because then it just makes it happen more. He's right.
They are not going to get. It's as simple as that. We could have talked to the Pakistanis. I mean, many, many occasions we've tried to talk to them. There were the famous back-channel negotiations for 4 years between Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and General Musharraf. The truth remains, however, that every time these processes of talking have been ended by a Pakistani terrorist attack. No one in India has any inclination to talk to the Pakistanis while they're pointing a gun at our heads.
You already use Excel, maybe some SQL too. But if you're working with data, you know that's...
Dr. Tharoor, who can talk to the Pakistanis and talk them down from this situation?
Well, I mean, like, if terrorism is such a huge problem over there, wouldn't it be, like, wouldn't the main problem be, shouldn't Pakistan's military try to get rid of these terrorist organizations themselves? Because if they have this huge problem and these people are putting a target on their citizens' back, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, because that's just what would make sense to me. It's like, if you're against these guys, why wouldn't you want to work with India and get rid of them? I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't understand that at all. Dude, you have no clue? Surely the obvious answer isn't the correct one. Surely it's not.
And help de-escalate. Who would they...
There's some, you know, extravagant crazy justification for why this actually makes sense. Surely it's not the obvious reason.
Listen to, because it doesn't sound like there's a huge amount of appetite in Washington to get even the slightest bit involved in this conflict.
The Chinese issued a very interesting statement. China is Pakistan's quote-unquote all-weather friend, and Pakistan has for some years now been a de facto client state of China. China controls 30% of Pakistan's debt, on top of which you have the big China-Pakistan economic corridor running through the country, which is of some economic value to China as well. So one would assume that that is one patron the Pakistanis would listen to. China has issued a very interesting statement.
So they have to tell China to make them stop?
That both India and Pakistan are their neighbors. They don't want to see a war in their neighborhood between neighbors, and they would like there to be peace and understanding and calm.
That would make sense.
If China gives that message to Pakistan, that might be something Islamabad would be well inclined to heed.
Okay, and in terms of the sentiment towards the United States in India, I want to ask you about a piece in.
You got to look up why Modi is a racist and a fascist. He's doing this for elections. He silences opposition parties and he's assassinated their own nationals in Canada. So let me get this straight. Do you think that? Do you think? I'm just curious about this. Do you think that Modi is the one who orchestrated the terror attack that killed the 26 people? It's like a false flag. Like India went and killed their own people in order to, make this look bad? I don't know for sure. Well, if you had to guess. Like, if you had to guess, like, what do you think the probability is? Like, if you had to say, like, which side of the fence are you gonna come off on? Which one? Like, if you had to guess. I condemn the attack entirely. I'm with India on the losses of the innocent, but they blame Pakistan within the hour of the incident. You're not answering the question. If you had to fall off on one side of the fence or another, who do you think's responsible for the attack? Not Pakistan. Well, there it is. Not Pakistan. Surely that's not it.
The Times of India online edition, it says, quote, the US Vice President J.D. Vance urges restraint, sparking outrage. That's the headline of an article. And it suggests that India feels backstabbed by the United States. And I just wondered whether that was a perception you felt and whether it's a widely shared feeling.
As I said, I haven't actually seen that article, so I don't know what the author intended. But to my mind, we have already announced restraint. We have made it very clear that our operation was in retaliation for a terrorist outrage, and that was it. That it was, in fact, the word used in the public briefing was it was non-escalatory in nature, that India was not intending to escalate further. So you can counsel restraint all you like, you're preaching to the converted. On the other hand, tell the Pakistanis to exercise restraint, and that will be the end of that. It's Pakistan that somehow feels an obligation to somehow react further, having already initiated this problem with a terror attack. They want to continue to fire back at India. And as I say, if they do, India will have to give it back to them. We have our own self-respect.
Everything about this is logical, and they haven't used a single bit of video game footage to justify the attacks. We haven't seen a single bit of Ukraine or video game footage coming out of India yet.
But as long as
I think that's
Pakistan decides that they're not anxious to have an all-out war, they will not be one. If, however, the Pakistani army, which is deeply unpopular in its own country, has decided that they actually do want a war in order to shore up their faltering and tottering image as the savior of the nation, then, of course, the Pakistani military will get what it wants. it gets what it wants in Pakistan anyway, and India is not going to lie back and take it lying down.
Up until this point, has there been any saber rattling, nuclear saber rattling, I should say, on either side that you've detected?
Well, there can't be on India's side because India has a declared, published, and long-established policy of no first use of nuclear weapons. So India would never rattle any sabers of a nuclear kind because that is the Indian policy.
That's good.
Pakistan, on the other hand, does not have such a policy and has implied that it would be willing to use nuclear weapons. So again, the ball is in Pakistan's court. You do understand that equivalence between the two countries on any of these grounds is completely false. You have a terrorist providing state and you have a terrorist victim state. You have a state that has refused to abjure nuclear weapons on their first use. You have another state that has absolutely refused to use nuclear weapons first.
And they have said this, by the way. Like, I've seen them say this twice.
So, I mean, there is no equivalence. There is no comparison.
Okay, so where do you see this heading to?
100% on India's side. Yeah, I mean, I like personally, from everything that I've seen, it seems like Pakistan are liars and India are the ones that are being aggressed on. And it seems like Pakistan is sheltering and supporting terrorist groups that work in ways that the official military can't work. And I think that that explains why the military is sympathetic to them going to their funerals. That's the reason why. Like, I mean, so of course you think that, yeah, of course. I mean, I don't know. Like, and also, by the way, I have this policy. This is just something that I've learned, like, over the years, is that when somebody lies once, you shouldn't trust anything they say. And if you're already lying about, like, what you're like, you know, like planes that you're shooting down, if you're lying and putting up video game footage as like evidence of war, like this kind of stuff, like what is this, right? I'm going to immediately not trust you. Like, yeah, dishonest Abe. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, once a cheater, always a cheater. Exactly. So never trust Trump? What does Trump have to do with it? We're not talking about Trump. Who's talking about Trump? Nobody's talking about Trump. What do you mean?
Your predictions, Dr. Thoreau?
Well, I'd like to predict that at some point,
TDS,
people in other capitals will tell Pakistan, you've fired enough shells, you've killed enough Indians, your honor is satisfied, lay off. And if capitals don't say that to Pakistan, and they don't say it firmly enough, and I mean particularly Beijing, then indeed all bets are off, and you might well see Pakistan being tempted to escalate for very short-term military reasons in their country. I certainly hope it doesn't come to that, because in the long term, there's no way they can gain from such a conflict. They've already earned the opprobrium of the world as a terror-providing nation, as the hosts of Osama bin Laden, as the people who spawned the Taliban, and having as...
Pakistan has never had a prime minister who completed their full term. What happened to him? No, that's bullshit. There's no way I would believe that. What? No, Pakistan has never had a prime minister who completed a full 5-year term in office since independence in 1940. What? This is the closest? Bro, can you imagine how stressed out you'd have to be? Like being the Pakistani prime minister, you're like, fuck. Oh no. Yeah, bro, I'd be so stressed out. Oh god, it's a shelf life. Yeah, oh my god. Military influence, constitutional powers, political instability. No Pakistani prime minister has completed a full 5-year term. Oh my god. Wow.
Hillary Clinton evocatively said, having nurtured vipers in their backyard, they've been bitten by the same vipers they've nurtured. This is a country that really, really needs all the goodwill it can get from the rest of the world. And for that reason, what Pakistan needs to do right now is to stop its military provocations, do not embark on any further misadventures, and let this thing die down. India certainly does not want to prolong it.
And just lastly, I mean, would you say in India there's unanimity on this issue right across the political spectrum? Do all Indians sing from the same song sheet here?
Very, very strongly so. And in fact, India, I mean, I speak for an opposition party, and the opposition party, the Congress party, was the first to stand up and say we stand with the government and behind our armed forces in this.
That's pretty meaningful.
Particular moment of national crisis. We do have domestic political differences. Those will be addressed when the crisis is over.
Yeah.
Right now, we are all united, and I see very, very little dissent. Of course, there are people who prefer peace to war. So does any sensible human being on the planet. But when war is thrust upon us, it would only be a coward who refuses to fight back. And we will fight back if it's thrust upon us.
Man.